So, Don, are you there?
Hey, yes, I am there, and you kind of sizzling hot over there in Denver, Colorado.
It's spanking time when I'm on the air.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. You're over there funking it up.
You know what, Don? I mean, first of all, the tracks that are on your CD, I mean, the stuff is just great. I mean, it's just great. And so, funk can't be borrowed. You can't rent it. You can't lease it. You know, you have to be born with it. You have to be. And boy,
Exactly.
the tracks you got on this release is very good. So, first of all, thank you for
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you for joining us here. At KGNU, and this is the Sleepless Night Session and the show of Funk Above the Rest. I'm Skip, the Funktologist, and it's an honor to have you on the show. So, hey.
Oh, God. I'm honored to be here, Skip. Just like for your, I have so many people that actually hit me on Facebook when they found out that you were, I was going to be on your show, and I'm just really been on the late page, because I didn't know that you was jamming all this funk while everybody else was sleeping. You up there funking it up. So
yeah.
I got a shout out list, and so I'll do it in a minute. But I've got so many people from all over the world that really love this music, because it's so spiritual, and it's fun, and it's soothing. It's just an art form that needs to be here in order to heal the world. And I'm really honored to be able to share this with you, and that you're sharing my music with the rest of the world. It's indeed an honor.
Okay, well, you know what, Don? Why don't you go ahead and do all of your acknowledgments, and we'll go ahead and get that taken care of.
Oh, you want to do that now?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I couldn't do them all, but I had like Chris Lander from L.A. I had Elisa Hawthorne from New York. I got Bruno Giovanni from Italy. Dale Sotrain from Dallas, Texas. Michiel Stoke from the Netherlands. Rob Turner, Cincinnati, Ohio. And then we had Wadi Funk, and these are new fans that just hit me, and they're from Japan. There's three. Well, there's Wadi Funk, Mickey Sakani, and Sergio Muto. Those are from Tokyo. And then you got Benton Gardner from Hampton, Virginia. I know he's listening. Zelda Norwood, L.A. Eric from Paris. Eric Roner and the Horn Dogs. Maury Nichols, Las Vegas. Dexter Gilmore, Atlanta. Charlotte Morgan from Cleveland, Ohio. And then a shout out to, oh God, where is this guy? I guess it's Captain Funk on the radio in Paris, France. And he's at the Benton Center Radio France, and he's at the radio station right now listening to your radio station in France.
Okay.
So, okay.
Did you get them all?
Shout-outs out the way. I got them all. The ones that, there was so many. So, but I picked those guys who are constantly supporting us and keeping this art form that we call funk alive. And I'm just honored that they're my friends and my funk soldiers. And that's why we call them soldiers, because we're all down here in the trenches trying to keep this art form alive.
That's right. Okay. All right, Don. So let's start off with this. Where are you from?
I'm from Sacramento, California.
Okay, so you never really left that area then?
I did. I left. Actually, I lived everywhere. When I was touring with P-Funk, it seems like we were living somewhere every 2 years. I was going somewhere. Detroit, Michigan, stayed there for a couple of years. I stayed in Toronto, Canada for about 3 years, and then Los Angeles for the most part for a good 20 years. So, and then I came back home to take care of my mom. My mom got sick, so I came home and to take care of her, and I just stayed. So.
Okay. All right. Now, are there other musical members in your family?
Yeah, all of us. My mom, she sang and danced, played piano. My father was an incredible singer. My brothers play guitar. My sister sings. Everybody. It was more or less a hobby when I was growing up. No one really took it serious. We sang in church, of course. I've always wanted to, and had dreams that it would be a lot bigger. I've always wanted to be a part of a famous group. So when I was like 15 years old, my father took me to see Sly and the Family Stone. Mm-hmm. They were playing at the Memorial Auditorium, downtown Sacramento, and they were opening up actually for a group called Santana. Mm-hmm. Or it might have been the other way around. It might have been the other way. I think Santana might have opened up for Sly and the Family Stone. And I was hooked from that moment on because of the energy and the magnetic energy that was flowing from that stage to the audience and back. It just captured my whole heart, and then that's when I knew right then and there. I said one day I was going to be a part of a famous group just like that one. I never thought in my wildest imagination that it would actually be a member of Sly and the Family Stone, but that's what I said when I was 15 years old.
Okay. So with that having been said, who were some of your, influences when you were growing up, whether they were musicians, artists, or whatever?
Well, growing up in my genre of music, there wasn't any, they played everything on one station. You didn't have the separatism in music. You could hear Frank Sinatra, Frank Zappa, you would hear the whole Motown, you'd hear Frankie Valli, you'd hear Doris Day, you'd hear the Four Seasons, you'd hear Elvis Presley, you'd hear Donny Hathaway and Marvin Gaye, of course Stevie Wonder. It was all played on one station. You actually hear classical music would come on for a few hours, and then I even appreciated that. There was opera. I mean, you'd hear country and western, folk music would all be played on one station when we grew up. So I believe that's kind of lost in the world today because a lot of the kids are not being able to actually, what I call music appreciation, when you learn to accept and appreciate all art forms. And so I was blessed to be able to appreciate all the music, even country and western. So yeah, I grew up listening, and my biggest influences, I believe, because my dad used to play Ray Charles, Donny Hathaway, and Marvin Gaye like every day. He'd get home from work and he'd play it constantly. So those are probably my biggest influence.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, Don, what I want to do is go to your release now. It's called All My Funky Friends. And I'm going to play another track here, and then we'll come back and talk some more. But, when you can take a song that's already good, and then somebody covers it and makes it better, wow, just kudos.
Well, if you're going to have the audacity to cover someone else's music that's already a hit, you have to do it just as good or even better.
Right.
So I think
Don, that is too deep funky.
Well,
man,
I always forget how funky that cut is. I haven't heard that in a while. Thank you for sharing that.
So, since we're on your release right now, who wrote the material? Who helped you arrange it, put it together? I mean, who were some of the people that helped you with this project?
Wow, funkcologist, I got to bring you up to speed. Do you know that CD was released in Europe in 2000? That CD is almost 10 years old?
Yes, I know.
Yeah, and it just sounds just as fresh and funky as the day we recorded it. It's amazing. That's why funk is ageless. But there was only two people actually that produced that, or actually three. Myself as a producer, writer, Jeanette Washington from the Brides Parlette, and D. Levance, a guy named D. Levance that plays left-hand synth bass for the Isley Brothers. So the three of us put that together. That was it.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you, man. I mean, it epitomizes funk for the 21st century. No question.
Oh, thank you.
No
so
question. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
Don, you mentioned earlier that you ended up, being in Sly and the Family Stone, and then of course, you eventually ended up in Parliament. So why don't you take us through that series, that started you? How did you get with Sly, and then, move on and become a member of the P-Funk Empire?
Well, I had a local friend who was a drummer, who was in a band here in Sacramento, and he called me up one day and said that Sly was looking for background singers for this new album he was doing on CBS, and that was I interested in meeting him. I thought, are you kidding? So we got in his car, and we drove from my house down to the Bay Area, which is, an hour drive or so. We went to this studio called a record plant, and the record plant was in a little bayside city called Sausalito. And I walked in the door, and so I used to have this studio that was made like a gladiator arena where you had to step down, and I remember that the microphone was at the top, but there was like steps that went down, and there was a board in the bottom of the arena. And I remember sitting there, and one of Sly's sisters, her name was Vet, and she was hoarse that day, and she couldn't sing the top notes. And I always sang first soprano because I actually sang in a concert choir, right? Mm-hmm. At that time, I was still singing opera, basically, and classical music, a little R&B too, but classical music. And so singing first soprano was really pretty simple for me. And I remember my friend saying, "Hey, Sly, Dawn can sing those parts." And Sly looked at me and said, "So what you waiting for, right?" Mm-hmm. So I walked up to the microphone and I sang the part. And then when the session was over, he walked over to me and said, "Welcome to Sly and the Family Stone." Simple as that. Just like that. Yeah. And 2 weeks later, I think we were at the American Music Awards where he performed there. And I went from on and on. A couple of years later, we were told that we were going to be opening up for Parliament Funkadelic. Mm-hmm.
Now, how old were you at this point in time?
It was just out of high school, not too long out of high school, actually,
okay.
Maybe.
All right.
So, around that, you kind of date me. So.
Well, both of us.
Pretty young. We were pretty young.
Right. Okay, so then from Sly, where'd you go next?
Well, when we were on the road with Sly, when the tour ended, George Clinton came over and he said he loved our sound, he loved that blend, and then with Sly, he always said that he felt that we had the perfect blend. I didn't really understand what he meant, until we started getting out there and singing with other groups or doing a lot of session work. The perfect blend is when you have three voices that sound like one voice, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of hard to find because usually it's always you can hear three distinct different voices, or someone's either singing too loud or too low, or but when you have a perfect vocal blend like we had with the three girls that sang with Sly, I believe George was impressed by that. So he asked us to go into, when this tour ended, George came over and asked us to go into the studio to work on an artist that he was producing at the time called the Horny Horns, which was Maceo Parker and Fred Wesley, and they were signed to Atlantic Records at that time. And he wanted us to sing, really I think it was one or two songs, and it turned out we sang the whole album. Mm-hmm. And then when that project ended, there was a guitarist extraordinaire, and his name was Eddie Hazel.
Oh, yeah.
And Eddie, I believe, was signed to Warner's, I believe it was, and he had a project, and he asked us to sing a couple of songs on Eddie's album, and we ended up singing most of the songs on an album called Guitar Dames.
Right.
Guitars, Dames, and Things, I think it was.
Yeah, Games, Dames, and Guitar Things.
Guitar Things, exactly, right. So Lynn Mabry, we finished Eddie's album, so we were in the studio for maybe about a couple of months, and then George called us up one day and said, "Hey, there was the Oakland Coliseum, and they were doing the, I think the Mothership Connection tour, I believe." And George called me and said, "Hey, you guys feel like singing? Come on down to the Coliseum." So when we got there, he kind of took us behind the back of these, like a six foot wall of Marshall amps where they had some microphones set up. And he goes, "You guys go there and sing whatever you want." And we said, "Really?" And that's what we did. So we're back there behind the amps, right underneath the spaceship, the mothership. And we sang that night. And then not too long after that, I realized that George had recorded our voices, and we ended up being on that album. Mm-hmm. And then he came and said, "Would you guys like to go on tour?" And so we said yes. And so we went on tour with P-Funk, right? Mm-hmm. And everything happened like it's all like this fantasy. It was just one fantasy after the next, Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's how we got with Parliament Funkadelic. I don't even remember when we actually started going out front, but I remember when we first started singing with P-Funk, we were always behind the back of the stage, behind the amps. Mm-hmm. And then one night, George said, "Why don't you guys go out front?" Mm-hmm. So we said, okay.
And that's when the stage went from 15 to 20, huh?
Well, actually,
15 to 20 people on stage.
Back when we were out, it was Glenn Goins, and it was pretty disciplined. Right. They didn't have as many people as they have now, or
and in the earlier
in the earlier, it was more a lot more disciplined, and it was more of a, I would say, put into mind like a Earth, Wind, and Fire. You don't really have too many people every time you go to a different show with all these different people sitting in all the time. That didn't happen until years down the line. But when Lynn and Mabry and I were there were two girls that were there before us, and that was Jeanette Washington and Debbie Wright. So then it became four women on the front line. And I believe it kind of started to change because before, of course, P-Funk's audience was 90% men.
Right.
And then so what George did, he had given his loyal followers something to dance to or to look at, you know? We became like eye candy.
Right.
And I remember there used to be sayings that we were hard as rock candy because we were a different type of females.
Right.
And you had to be in order to be in a boys' club.
Right.
With P-Funk at that time because it was strictly pretty sexist business at that time. And then so you had to be kind of aggressive females. And we grew up really fast. Coming from Sly, we were wearing gowns and rhinestones and long white gloves. Went from that whole different environment over to P-Funk where he was pretty wild. You know? There's a little wild over there. So we had to kind of fit in, and we did. So, and all of that we learned it on the spot. We went to the school of funk with P-Funk and Funkadelic.
Right. Okay. All right, KGNU listeners, we're speaking with Dawn Silva of the Brides of Funkenstein and the P-Funk Empire, of which she was a part of. And she's telling us a little bit about just how she ended up in the group. So now, Dawn, how did the Brides of Funkenstein now come about?
I believe that George had been planning this all along, right? He was very, very business savvy then. You know, he was always concocting all these different types of characters and fantasy people, and I think he was more into the fictitious part of an individual than he was the reality of it all, right? So he came up to me one day while we were in the studio and just said that he was putting together a female group, and I said, "That's nice, George," you know. Right. And so he started laughing, and he goes, "Well, you know who's going to be in it?" And I was like, "No," and he goes, "It's going to be you and Lynn." And I said, "Well, I really didn't want to be in a female group. I was actually satisfied singing for Parliament Funkadelic, and I probably would have done that for the rest of my life because it was probably the best." Best jobs I've ever had, the happiest I've ever had. So many people wanted to take that gig anyway, and I panicked. I was like, no, I don't want to be in a female group, George. He said, well, I've already started started cutting the tracks, and we're going to sign you to Atlantic Records, and it's going to happen. And he said, you guys can still sing with P-Funk, but you're also going to sing in your own group. The next thing I know, we were signed, and we started going in the studio, and I remember the first session that we did was with Bootsy Collins and his brother Phelps, and they had heard the track that they had recorded for us, and then I changed my mind. I was looking forward to being in this group because the track that Bootsy gave us, perhaps I believe it was one of the funkiest tracks I've ever heard in my life. And I really couldn't believe that he was actually going to give us this track. Right. And then I started panicking again because I thought he was going to change his mind and take it back, you know. But it was called Disco to Go, and I believe that Bootsy used to play the music, the composition when they came out on stage. I think that was their intro, right? And I remember when I heard it the first time when we watched Bootsy's show, how incredible that groove was, and for him to take that and give it to us, I was like, what an honor. And I'm still honored to this day that he gave us that track. That track, actually, when we released it, we recorded it, maybe in 2 or 3 days it was done. And when they released that song, in the first week it sold 300,000 copies. I already knew that when that track hit, that it was going to blow up. And it did.
Okay.
It did.
All right, well, hey, let's pull up again and play another track from, your release called All My Funky Friends.
All my funky brain.
This is another one I like, and I even like the title because it says it all. The title is As Long as It's